He is the foremost authority on covering the world of MMA. You can go to MMAfighting.com to find him. Ariel Helwani joins us now here on ESPN LA. Ariel, thanks for taking the time. Good catching up with you again. I guess my first question to you is, how real is this fight between Mayweather and Conor?
Well, guys, thanks again for having me on. Always great to talk to you guys. How real is it? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it is a thing. It's something that certainly the UFC side wants to get done. It's certainly something that Conor McGregor wants to get done. And by all indications, Floyd's side wants to get done. And as you probably heard on Wednesday, Dana White said that he came to terms with Conor about the fight. And that's significant only because Conor is a contracted UFC fighter. He can't just go out and box someone or do something in another combat sport without the UFC's blessing. And in the past, the UFC has always been very reluctant to let their fighters who are under contract do anything outside the UFC. So this is significant, but also important to note that doesn't mean the fight is done. Also important to note that we all knew that the biggest hurdle would be coming to terms with Floyd. So yeah, one hurdle has been crossed, but there are still plenty more in order for this fight to actually be a real thing.
Can you tell me approximately, not exact, but approximately how much money did McGregor receive?
Well, he didn't receive anything yet. They just had to come to terms on, what his cut would be, what the UFC's cut would be, because again, Conor isn't his own promoter. If he was a free agent, he could do this on his own, but he still has 4 fights left with the UFC, so they had to be on board with it. It's very interesting because not that long ago, Dana White said that he had a better chance of being the backup quarterback for the New England Patriots than this fight happening, and it seemed like there was some tension between both Conor and the UFC, and they could have maybe gone to court. Conor's people could have maybe tried to fight this and do this on their own, but I believe in early February they sat down with former CEO and former owner of the UFC, Lorenzo Fertitta. Everyone got, around a table and they came to terms on, all right, we're going to negotiate this together. We're going to try to do this together, and everyone will be happy. Conor believes that he can make, in the 8 figures if this fight comes to fruition. But as of right now, he just has a deal with the UFC. Remains to be seen what Floyd has to say about all of that.
Putting on your business hat for a second, we know that Conor just applied for a boxing license in Nevada. Magic Johnson has said, hey, let's have the fight here at Dodger Stadium. What's the best location to maximize this? Not as if you need a location to maximize it, but just, theoretically speaking from a tourism. Would it be great if that was in L.A.?
And by the way, the reason I got into journalism is because I don't know how to wear a business hat, just for the record. I'm not smart enough, but I will attempt with you guys. No, I think it's a no-brainer that it has to be in Las Vegas. That's the UFC's home. That's where Floyd always fights. He has his deal with MGM. They want this to be at the T-Mobile Arena. That's the brand spanking new arena. That's the now home of the new NHL team there, the Golden Knights. The UFC has a deal. They're one of, the preferred tenants, if you want to call it that, of T-Mobile. So honestly, I think it would do well anywhere. It would kill anywhere. It would sell out. They would break all kinds of gate records, pay-per-view records, all that stuff. But I would be shocked if it ends up anywhere outside of T-Mobile.
Ariel Helwani, MMAfighting.com. He's the foremost authority of covering MMA. He joins us here on ESPN LA. How much of a cut, of Conor's cut, does he have to give to the USC? Because I think, obviously, his purse, part of that money is going to go to Dana and the company. Do you know that kind of split or no?
So one thing about mixed martial arts, I know some of you, like boxing, it's a lot more hush-hush on this side of the fence. And I've tried to find out, what percentage would go to him, what percentage would go to the UFC, but no one really wants to talk about that. And quite frankly, I would be shocked if anyone actually gives us the real numbers. So all I know is that he's very happy, the UFC appears to be happy, and so we'll see what happens. But, they don't have, they're not a public company, they don't have to tell us. In boxing, for whatever reason, they're a lot more open with the payouts, but for various reasons, and one being the UFC just doesn't want other fighters to know how much fighters are making so that they can negotiate properly. They've always done a very good job of keeping everything under wraps and not telling us exactly how much is being made. So we really don't know the answer, but I do know that with the deal that was struck between Conor and the UFC, everyone appears to be happy at the moment.
How do other guys in the UFC feel about this? Do they feel like this is good for the sport, or do they feel like this is a spectacle?
That's a very good question. There are a lot of guys who feel like what Conor has revolutionized MMA, and anyone who doesn't want to admit to that is just fooling themselves. You're a quote-unquote hater, as the kids like to say. This guy has made it appropriate, comfortable, almost allowed to speak about, money. I know that sounds crazy, but in the past, fighters were so afraid to talk about money and what they think that they deserved and how much they were earning. Things like that were so hush-hush before Conor came along. I remember Conor was on my show a little less than 2 years ago, and he said that, in the not-too-distant future, he would make $100 million for a fight. And, the guy is amazing in the way that he is able to put things out there in the universe and then actually see them come true. I have to admit, when he said that, I was like, well, okay, this is a little far-fetched. $100 million? No, I mean, maybe $10 million. That's the ballpark that we were in, and now here we are. And if this fight happens, he would make around $100 million at least. And if the pay-per-view does better, then it would do, even more for him. So he has just revolutionized the way fighters think about, themselves as businessmen, as draws and things like that. So for the most part, they're all internally kind of happy that the game is changing a little bit. There are some who are like, an Anderson Silva. I wanted to fight Roy Jones a couple of years ago. You didn't let me. Nick Diaz. I wanted to box a couple of years ago. You guys didn't let me. There are some who think that he gets preferential treatment and things like that. And also there's been a trickle-down effect. A lot of fighters have seen what has happened to him, the amount of attention, the amount of money that he has generated, and they're trying to do the same. Unfortunately, it comes very natural to him. For others, when you try to force the trash talk, it's a little cringeworthy. So we're starting to see, I don't know if you guys saw that press conference last week, a fighter punched another fighter. They're kind of throwing out all kinds of outlandish things. I feel like fighters are starting to kind of say to themselves, okay, I need to do something spectacular like Conor did. Unfortunately, there's only one Conor McGregor, and not everyone can be him. But there's certainly been a trickle-down effect on many different fronts as a result of his success.
Ariel Helwani, MMAfighting.com. In regards to a regular boxing match, there's usually a decision about ring size, ounces of gloves, and those shots need to be called by somebody. Do you know if that's going to be Floyd's preference, or is Conor and the UFC going to have the ability to have input on that?
I do believe they will have input. I don't believe that those kind of details will hang up the fight.
Right.
Dana has said, okay, I got the Conor side done. Now I have to talk to the Floyd side, and Floyd's main negotiator, if you will, is his advisor Al Heyman, very powerful man in the world of boxing. They've been talking for several weeks. They've been talking, I would even say for a couple months now. So it's not like, okay, he's only been focusing on Conor and now he's going to go over and talk to Floyd. No, they've already been talking. They figured that at some point they would come to terms with Conor and then move along. And those things will be discussed, and I'm sure they'll be negotiated, but I don't think it's 100% on Floyd's side to determine it all. And also just want to mention, I've heard in the last week Dana say a lot, well, at some point I have to, pull the plug on this. I can't just keep doing this and having this drag on. I have to get back to my business. This is not what I do. And to that I would just say, yes, this is your business, Dana. You guys are going to make a lot of money. You're not doing this for charity. You're not doing this just out of the kindness of your heart because you want to see Conor make $100 million. The UFC is not having a particularly great year on pay-per-view. They were just sold for $4.025 billion. And this past few months, 2017, since the sale, they don't have one pay-per-view that can even sniff 1 million buys. And in 2016, they had 5. It was their best year ever. So this, one night sharing of the pie, co-promotion, if you will, with Mayweather Promotions would probably beat all their pay-per-views combined in terms of revenue generated in one night. So they stand to make a lot of money in this as well. So I don't think that they're going to try to be nitpicking for little details because, quite frankly, they have a big loan and they need to make a lot of money, and they will make a lot of money if this fight happens.
Ariel, I have 30 seconds. Real quick. Sure. I know this is going to be hard to do in 30 seconds. Ronda Rousey, does she fight again? And when do you expect to see John Bones Jones again?
Okay, well, Ronda Rousey, I don't like to predict those kind of things because someone will say, well, you said she'll never fight again, and then she comes back. As of right now, she has no plans. She's getting married. And John Jones is going to fight Daniel Cormier on July 29th in Anaheim, California. And if Keyshawn is out there, just give him the damn ball already. I always wanted to say that to him.
All right, sounds good. Ariel Helwani, MMAfighting.com, joins us here, the foremost authority on covering MMA. Ariel, pleasure, man. Thanks for the time.
Always speaking. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Ariel Helwani with us here.
Thank you.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Ariel Helwani with